Thank you for this introduction. First of all, I would like to say that it's an honor for me to speak here in a country which is full of pioneer scientists in studying climate change and in collaborative studies with indigenous peoples. So this presentation will argue that indigenous ecological knowledge is crucial for both indigenous peoples themselves, that's obvious, but also for scientists. In order to face climate change and other interlinked global changes, in order to understand impacts of global changes and adaptive practices, but also in order to design new research perspective. Before starting, I would like to thank the reindeer herders that accepted to work with us and to share their knowledge despite their extreme difficult current situation in Siberia. Without them, these studies wouldn't even exist. One of them, Mr. Gabyshev, is co-author of this presentation, as well as of several scientific papers, and is an associated member of our laboratory, the CEARC, in France. We have been working with Siberian peoples, leading various traditional economic activities, such as 2 types of reindeer herding, sustainable hunting, and fishing. Another important things to know about Siberia is that nowadays 70% of Siberian indigenous people depend totally or partly on the natural environment for surviving. For them, main subsistence and additional resources come from the natural environment through food and fur hunting, gathering, and reindeer herding. It is important to know that nowadays, among Siberian villagers and nomads, there are around 75% of unemployment, so no money for living. So natural environment is still their house, their feeding mother, call it as you want. And through these economic activities, there are frontline witnesses of profound effects climate and global changes have on the environment. So, during my experience of climate and global changes study, I tested 2 types of approaches. And here I refer to what Gunbrut have said about the position of the indigenous people in the position of observed and observers. So I have we have tested with them the 2 positions, and you will see the difference in results. So my first studies was according to classical anthropology methods for the study of perception of climate change and global changes among Evenk and Even, a little bit among the Even, so from 2006 to 2012. And the second, where we decided to change the position, is from 2013 and is a transdisciplinary study of climate change, where the collaboration with Evenk reindeer herders starts from the very beginning and designing of the project through the definition of methodologies and objectives until the analysis and collective publications. So here is the map where we have been working mostly in Far East Siberia with classical anthropology. The results are the following. So a frequent expression was occurring, akullen in their language mean it's getting hotter. So the Tungus have been, the Evenk and Even have been noticing climate and environmental changes for several decades. But these changes have been increasing for the last 5-11 years. If we summarize the change observed by Evenk and Even, we can say that the observed increase of summer and winter temperature, the coldest part of the winter, it means the temperatures below minus 50 Celsius degrees, is now 2 months shorter than it was 30 years in the past. The snow period is getting much shorter, and it has a lot of impact. They observe important and regular disruption in the depth and evolution of the snow cover. And in addition, Evenk and Even link those changes to changes into flora and fauna. For example, extinction of vegetal and animal species, appearance of new species of bird and insects, and also a global decrease of animal population, except predators. Other changes seem to endanger reindeer with direct effects, for instance, with an increase of parasitic illnesses among the reindeer, domestic reindeer. Also, indirect effect with the appearance of new flies that lay larvae in the antlers of the reindeer and sometimes raise infections and sometimes the death of reindeer. And in addition, an increase of forest fire, which reduce the pastures of the reindeer and increase the population of predators on the reindeer pasture. But from 2011-2012, a new expression appears. In Evenk language, it's Buramanakollen. So it means the weather, the nature has totally changed. Nomads complain on the snow period, which arrives with 2-3 months later, which shorten the fur hunting period. Sometimes the important lack of snow, like in 2011, created a lot of problem for transportation, tent isolation, hunting, herding, territories deficit, and anomalous rainy summer created a lot of problem for villages and herders. Another important aspect of climate and environmental changes in Siberia is that they are perceived as practically, and also through spiritual beliefs. So some of the changes, as it is in Tibet also, are perceived as the consequence, the revenge of the natural environment against the human activity. So climate change is faced and perceived together with other global changes, such like ecological, geopolitical, industrial, economical, juridical, that threaten reindeer herding and hunting. And this framework of combined abrupt changes with unpredictability of climate is a source of anxiety and requires constant effort of adaptation. These adaptations are allowed by indigenous ecological knowledge. In this context, with Evenk herders in 2011, we started to design a project of community-based observatory with social and environmental sciences. So I'm coming to the second approach, which is taking place in the frame of the BRIS project, so bridging indigenous and scientific knowledge about global changes in the Arctic, adaptation and vulnerability of societies and the environment. And among other, these projects aim to consider the notion of extreme meteorological event from the differing point of views of indigenous people and scientists. And also, community-based transdisciplinary observatories are jointly conceived by scientists and herders. So we joined our ideas to the ideas of our colleague. So it's a joint project with French colleagues and institutions, as Marie said, but also, which is very important, with local partners, as we will see. So from the 5 community-based transdisciplinary observatory in Eurasia we have planned, 3 are currently active and 2 in Siberia. And I will talk only about the community-based I am involved in, so the Evenki one. So in general, BRISC project allow to compare 2 types of reindeer herding, if not 3, extensive reindeer herding and reindeer herding with small herd. Okay, so our community-based transdisciplinary among the Evenk in Siberia, reindeer herders, is one of the coldest parts of Siberia with temperature under minus 50 degrees in a zone of southern permanent permafrost and in the small mountains natural forest. So as in many other places in the Arctic, there is a lack of observation data, sorry. So from January 2013, with reindeer herders, we built up a community-based observatory. So according to methodologies designed by the issues defined by herders and by scientists. And then it was adapted in situ, so in the forest, by herders who are the main observers. Our colleague Evenk forecasting specialist and me as social anthropologist working there for a long time. The produced data are climatic and indigenous daily observation for now 44 months continuously, the documentation of indigenous environmental knowledge, documentation of adaptive strategies, and mapping of nomadic roads, sacred places and place measures. We have several methods of observation, like nomadic measures, which was a bit challenging for our climatologist, analysis of snow depth, analysis of snow quality. It resulted in knowledge co-production publication on evolution of snow and ice covers, landscape transformation, snow, ice, wind, and topography interactions. In addition, these methods allowed to identify several changes in local biodiversity. Herders distinguish species between the disappearing ones, the decreasing ones, the appearing ones, and the increasing ones. Our collective analysis of abnormal winters and summers, as well as of events considered as extreme by nomads, demonstrate frequent anomalies, if not permanent anomalies, in snow and ice covers evolution, and its important variation according to the diverse topographies. Those anomalies seem to cause significant changes in the vegetal cover as well. It shows also the socio-economic impact of these changes, and the Evenk are more worried about the accumulation of anomalies in the snow cover. With Gabashev, we have identified a set of disruptions in on the snow cover that threatens, among other activities, sable hunting and the subsistence and well-being of the society. Climate change in Siberia, in eastern Siberia, shows, as in many places of the Arctic, a high unpredictability. During the last 5 years, for example, during the winter of 2015, low temperature under minus 50 degrees were followed by abrupt warming, and it weakened the ice on the river, and it made very dangerous the transport by reindeer sledge or by snowmobile. Also, they noticed that the different type of snow, because Evenk people, like many other people of the Arctic, have complicated, complex typologies of snow. It doesn't arrive in the right moment. So, for instance, they had typically spring snow coming in autumn. Also, and of course, it challenged a lot of things, like ability to move, ability for the reindeer to reach pastures, and so far. Summer of 2015 brought together several extreme events, like abnormal warming, appearance of large population of insects, and new insects also, dryness and drying up of vegetal cover. Also, most of the calf died out because of this dryness of rivers. Forest fires often happened close to the village. Very often, climate anomalies are combined with other pressures. For example, during the summer 2015, because of the increase of wolf population, reindeer herders kept their herds close to villages and towns, which means close to mining zones, and which means, of course, an important threat on the reindeer health. But they are stuck between predators on the one hand and industrialization on the other. During the winter and summer of 2016, in addition to climate anomalies, the growth of wolf and bear population was declared to be the #1 problem endangering reindeer herding in the region, a problem which is in face of which it is very difficult to adapt. Talking about adaptation, first let me quote a sentence that is I met frequently in the narratives I recorded. As long as we have reindeer, as we have landscape and knowledge, we can adapt. This is this formula. So our analysis of adaptive strategies shows that indigenous traditional ecological knowledge is indispensable in various domains. Herders adapt in Siberia and in the areas thanks to mobility. They really use permanently mobility to adapt to those anomalies, and also by changing their herding and hunting techniques. And for this, you need traditional ecological knowledge, of course. Traditional ecological knowledge is also merged with modern techniques for adapting. And traditional knowledge is also used in a way to adapt to market economy, for instance, in developing ethnotourism. Okay. Then, let me conclude. As a conclusion, we have seen that indigenous people traditional knowledge is indispensable for facing climate change. And in the domain of science, the collaboration with reindeer herders give much richer results than simple classical anthropology. I can tell you an anecdote. I spent many years in trying to study event societies. I spent 6 years nomadizing with them, and I thought I know something about indigenous knowledge when I started this work in 2013. But when we changed the position, so I was not studying the society, but was with the herders, studying the environment, I understood that I knew nothing. So this is a good lesson for me. And we are 4 years on this, documenting this knowledge, and we have not finished it, and we have already such big package of knowledge. So, yes. Also, I would like here to advocate with everybody here, I think, for the much better recognition of involvement of indigenous people in research, not only by words, but also of recognizing them a status, a scientific status. For my experience, for instance, in France, or when you apply to a European project, it's extremely difficult to find a way to ensure salary to indigenous herders without scientific diploma, to be recognized entirely as a member of, and to be paid, recognized, and so forth. So it can sound very material, but it's very important. Yes. So herders are frontline witnesses of profound changes, and what we also with Maxence Rojo, which have been working with Toju reindeer herders, we all noticed that reindeer herders want their knowledge and observation to be heard. There is this anxiety. There is a strong interaction between climate and environmental changes with other changes I didn't talk at all, which is industrial development, juridical position, and so forth. So but it's an entire subject. Then we have noticed in this project that co-production of knowledge is not kind of comparing knowledge, but mutual learning, and definitely indigenous knowledge and science complement each other. And one of the conclusion of our climatologist conclusion is that indigenous people knowledge and observation demonstrate that statistic analysis of atmospheric variables is not sufficient, and there is a strong need for more sophisticated and systemic approaches in science. Okay, and yes, definitely working with indigenous people knowledge raise new research perspective. And as Marie told, some of the results of this project are reinvested in the IBES project, but unfortunately will be a small part as it could be. Thank you for your attention. And there in Siberian languages there is no thank you, but there is a goodbye, which is live well. I wrote it in different languages we were working with, and so far. Thank you for your attention.